Hello, everybody, and welcome to a live about Talk to the Entities. Good morning if you are in the UK and Ireland. Good afternoon if you're just heading into the afternoon in Central European time. And hello to all my friends all over the world. My name is Rachel O'Brien. As you know, you're watching my social handles. And today I'm going to have a little conversation in regard to entities, and what if you are more aware than you have ever acknowledged? What if you are more aware of entities than you have ever acknowledged? Okay, so let's start here. When I was a kid, I was aware of entities, and my grandmother was super aware of entities, and she didn't have an issue with it. In fact, she had a saying, the living would do more to you than the dead. What she means by that is living people would do more harm to you than the dead. She used to always say this, the living will do more harm to you than the dead. So she had a massive capacity with the spirit world. And when I was a little girl, one of my favorite entity stories is I wanted a new dress. And I was like, Nan, that's our affectionate name for grandmothers in Ireland. Nan, I'd love a new dress. And she said, ask your grandmother, Maggie Gould. Ask Maggie Gould to get you a dress. So anyway, I remember being in our kitchen in Farranree in Cork in Ireland, and I looked out to the trees and I was like, Nan, can you bring me a dress? And the next day, sure enough, I remember a big plastic bag with dresses where I was outside our front door. Someone had dropped dresses for myself and my sister, and I wanted a lemon dress, and I got exactly the lemon dress with a white belt. I won't ever forget it. And so that's where, as a kid, I was using my entity awareness to my advantage, and I was willing to be gifted from the spirit world. And then my mom had a very different perspective about it. When I got to like maybe 7, don't tell anyone that you talk to spirits. It's crazy. It's wrong. And so she had a lot of conflict in regard to being entity aware. And so by the time I got to 40, I had shut down everything that I was aware of in the spirit world. Everything. And then I found Talk to the Entities, which is a body of work which supports you to become more conscious in what you are aware of. Now, I am going to say this. Because the cause of my conflict with my entity awareness was I don't see ghosts the way I'd see Rachel, or the way we've some translators on here. The way I see their physical matter is very different to the way that I perceive entities and the spirit world. And so for me, a lot of the information that we get from movies had created conflict due to I didn't see it that way. So one of the things that we talk about in Talk to the Entities is it's an energetic awareness. If you think someone is in the room with you and they're dead, they are. If you see something out of the corner of your eye, you see something out of the corner of your eye. So the first question that we talk about in Talk to the Entities is this an entity? You can ask, is it something else or is it someone else? And then if you get it's an entity, that is an awareness of the spirit world. In other words, people that no longer have a body. And a lot of us have been trained to go to the conclusion of what it is to be spirit aware, instead of develop our unique abilities and our unique way of perceiving and being aware of the spirit world. Okay. And so just a little bit of my own story. I found myself at 40 years of age, shut off all these capacities to talk to entities, to contribute to them, to cooperate, to receive, to clear. And so I would hear voices in my head, and I would go to certain lands or buildings, or I would be at a funeral and I would perceive energies. perceiving of energy, not thinking, not feeling. Perceiving is that you will perceive an energy. And I went to actually a psychiatric ward in Cork, in the city that I grew up in. And I was going there to tell them that I was crazy and to lock me up, you know. And I'll always forget this day. It was St. Michael's Ward in the Mercy Hospital in Cork. And I went there to say, hey, lock me up. I'm crazy. I hear voices in my head. And that day I met a nurse in that hospital and she said to me, we have nothing here for you. There is nothing wrong with you, but we have nothing here for you. And so she saw something beautiful in me. And about a couple of months later, I found Access Consciousness and I found Talk to the Entities. I haven't got my book open. This is my manual. I found Talk to the Entities. And therein began the training of me developing the ability to be aware of the way that I perceive the spirit world. And so when we named this live, what are you aware? What if you're more aware than you haven't acknowledged? For me, I would feel an entity's feelings. So let's say someone died and they're missing their children or their family. I would sense that loneliness and I would think it was me because I didn't have the question, is this an entity? Which is, this question, is this an entity, has changed my whole life. And so I would hear their thoughts if I drove past a hospital, or I was in London one time working in a place called the Columbia Hotel, and I would sense, I would hear the entity's thoughts. And it was, I found out later that that Columbian Hotel was turned into a military hospital in World War II. And I could hear their voices. Now, I can hear their voices. Now what? Are you gifted with the spirit world and with communicating to the spirit world? So here's the thing. When you have a gift, not a curse, and you might consider it a curse right now until you move through and educate yourself on the way to deal with your spirit awareness. So here's the thing. I actually had an ability to contribute and cooperate with the spirit world and gift these entities clearings and communicate with them so that they could be heard, so that they could be acknowledged. And so my point of view is I was entity aware. I had coping mechanisms with it, which would be food when I would be aware of a lot of entities, or it could be trying to escape awareness. But actually, the problem isn't the symptoms. What's really going on is I hadn't acknowledged that I was aware of a whole world. And now today in 2025, for me, of course, there's the spirit world. Where do people go when they die? Where will you go when you die? How would you like to be treated? Would you like someone to say, hi, Rachel, how are you? How's it going for you? What has been your transition? What's it like for you to no longer have a body? You know, so these entities can move to the earth. And so into the earth, into consciousness, into oneness. So the big movement of Talk to the Entities is to support people to know that they are aware of a whole world. And so we call this spherical awareness. And I am very spherically aware. There is no timelines. I'm aware of all timelines. And the ability to be present with what I'm aware of has been the greatest gift to me enjoying being alive. And so I would hear the entity's thought and think it was my thought, you know? And so today's live, just take a moment and take a breath into your body and just ask yourself the question, have I unconsciousness in regard to the spirit world? In other words, am I not being present with what I am aware of? Did you grow up with parents that had effective tools in dealing with what they were aware of? in the spirit world. You know, some people drink copious amounts of alcohol to avoid their spirit awareness. Lots of coping mechanisms. And so for me, judgment of myself, making myself wrong was my coping mechanism. What's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with me. What if everywhere you think you're wrong, there's a strongness and a capacity that you haven't harvested and developed to work to your advantage? And so when I went to my first Talk to the Entities at the beginning, thank you to Shannon O'Hara, the creator of Talk to the Entities, I learned effective tools that allowed me to no longer be the effect of what I was aware of, to actually affect everything that I was aware of with clearing, sometimes communicating, cooperating, and receiving. And so today I'm going to give you guys the basic clearing tools for Talk to the Entities. Now, I do want to say this. The spirit world isn't all one way. There's not like just like scary ghosts or ghosts with points of views. There's a massive, I'm going to say, characteristic of the spirit world. You have the spirits of the earth. These are the spirits that live in the trees, bodies of water, flowers, dancing daisies, just so much beauty. They bring about like vegetables, the spirit in the vegetables. And then you have, you know, you might have entities that died when they were in a war, or there's just like a vast characteristic of the spirit world. And so entities are not all the same. That's the big message. Number one, they're not all the same. Number two, entities are quite easy to clear. Okay, and let's gift you the basic clearing tools. So we have the identity clearing and we have a job clearing. So an identity clearing could be, here's Paddy in the west of Ireland. His name is Paddy, and he's decided that the identity is all that he is, that he is not this infinite being with infinite awareness. And so here's the basic entity clearing. Who were you, Paddy? Who were you before that? Who were you before that? Who were you before that? And who can you be in the future? Now notice that when I am running this clearing, I'm not trying to get rid of Paddy. I'm not going into reaction, which is compressing my body, or going into, oh, there's no drama. There's a being and a presence required for you to actually enjoy and receive and have the joy of acknowledging that here's this person who died, and I'm acknowledging them, their being. And so it's including all beings. Who are you? Who were you before that? He might have been Carlos in Mexico. Who were you before that? And who can you be in the future? And then you can run all your magnetic imprinting. That's the finger imprinting. That's all the characteristics of the personality, the person. Will you now destroy and uncreate it all? And here's the Access Consciousness clearing statement. Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 100. Shorts, boys, povets, creations, bases, and beyonds. Very simple. And so I started running the clearings, and none of this is through a thinking mind. It's all energetic. I started to have way more peace, started to be way more relaxed, started to be able to function way more ease in my life, not hearing all these voices and having a lot of confusion about making choices. So that's the identity clearing. Now we're going to do the job clearing, which is, you might have, let's take Paddy again. His job might be to look after the farm, look after his people, his family. And so he's stuck. This is my farm. I own this. And this is my job, to have this forever, to look after this, to look after my family. And so you're leading them out of a limitation that confines them to that time, that identity, that job. So what was your job? Oh, my job was to look after my family. My job was to look after the farm. What was your job for that? What was your job for that? What can you be in the future? Take all your magnetic imprinting, right and wrong, access clearance statement, right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 100 shorts, boys, povids, creations, bases, and beyond. And these 2 clearings will cover like 98%, probably 97% of the entities that you're aware of. Just like in your daily living, not all entities are personal. Like say if I walk through the street of the village that I live in today, I might know like 10 people. So personal is where there's other steps required, communication processes, having a chat, essentially, you know. And one of the things that I've noticed with myself in developing my craft to be spirit aware, that I am spirit, I'm going to say to develop my craft to trust that the spirit world is real and I am spirit aware, has been to run the clearings, develop my ability to know what I'm aware of in the spirit world, and then first of all clear, and then communicate if it's someone that was close to me. In other words, a personal relationship, this or another lifetime. And then we teach all these and taught the entities at the beginning, clearing, communicating, cooperating, working with the spirit world to create something greater. Yes, you can use your craft to your advantage. And then receiving, which receiving to me is probably one of the greatest gifts that I get for being alive. The house that I am living in, I ask the entities, the spirits of the earth and the benevolent beings and the conscious beings and the beings of light to support me to find a place to live. I found a place to live in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I am not joking. Ask and receive. What is waiting and ready? Who or what is waiting and ready to gift to you that you are not receiving from because the judgments of either your family or culture? I'm going to say, when I talk about culture, I'm like the behaviors that are dominant in our world right now in regard to being aware of the spirit world. You know, it's wrong. Don't talk about it. It's bad. And so who and what are ready and waiting to gift to you and to work with you and to cooperate with you that you are not receiving from, because the cause of this, the reasons, the justifications are all the judgments that you've locked into your body, locked into your life, like me when I went into that psychiatric ward and said, hey, I'm pretty sure I'm crazy, lock me up. And the nurse said, no, you're not. Actually, there's nothing wrong with you. And then I asked, hey, consciousness, universe. You see, the thing about this, folks, is we have psychic abilities with the universe. We have psychic abilities with the spirit world. And if we put these psychic abilities through the world, people, their points of views and judgments, you will eradicate and eliminate your gifts and your talents and your abilities, because judgment is a black hole that destroys receiving. And so when I recognized that judgment wasn't a reality, that it wasn't true, it was just invented points of views, you don't have to be scary of your spirit awareness. You can just be present with it and use it to your advantage, you know. But people have impelled a lot of fear in regard to the potency of being spirit aware. For me, it's a potency of being spirit aware that I can use to create a greater world, to talk to ghosts that maybe nobody else have acknowledged, received, cleared, contributed to. And so it's this beautiful world that I would say most pretend is not there, but it is. It is a reality. And so I would say, if you're here and you know I'm entity aware, I've been entity aware, you know, when I was a kid, I would talk to imaginary friends, you know, or I can feel when someone is dead, I can sense the energy when they're around me. start to use the clearings, the who are you and the what was your job. And if it delivers more peace and more ease and more space, which it did for me, then get yourself to a Talk to the Entities, the beginning class. I'm facilitating one on Saturday, the 28th. We'll do it over 8 weeks. And develop this ability that you have a kindness for it, have a trust in what you know. And one of the things that I love about being entity aware is I really got to develop my knowing. What do I know that nobody else knows about the spirit world? What do I know is true? What do I know? And so what magic can you choose to be to create magic as the fabric of your reality? This is a wonderful gift to have. And most of the people that I know that have this gift are suffering from the symptoms of avoiding being entity aware. Head stuff, body stuff, thinking they're crazy. And I know that I would probably not be alive today only for the Talk to, I know I wouldn't, only for the Talk to the Entities tools. So I hope this live contributes to you. What if today you could acknowledge what you are aware of? Is this an entity? Oh, I am aware of the spirit world. I'm not wrong. I'm not crazy. Actually, this is a strength and ability. Of course, there's a spirit world. What, because it doesn't look like our physical bodies, it doesn't exist? Then you're saying that bacteria doesn't exist. There's so many things that the naked eye can't see that exist. And so, and even look at the way when we plant a seed in our earth, a vegetable, you know, all these invisible energies that are massively impacting our world and our daily living. And so, how is your entity awareness impacting the way you live? For me, I was negating entities, and so I had negative symptoms. And then when I started acknowledging that I am spirit aware and there is nothing wrong with me, and yeah, I'm different, I'm very different, everything in my daily living started to shift. Everything. I'd walk into a room, someone would be wearing a ring, and I'm like, oh, that's a beautiful ring. Is it? Oh, that my grandmother left me that ring. So this is a way of communicating that doesn't make any cognitive sense. It's an energetic capacity that only you can acknowledge, only you can nurture, and only you can receive. So there it is, folks. If you find this live beneficial, please send it to a friend or send it to someone that you love. I know by me acknowledging the way that entities communicate with me through hearing their thoughts or feeling their feelings, that has benefited a lot of people when I've talked about that, you know. So check out Talk to the Entities. It is a beautiful body of work to create more consciousness and more inclusion of the spirit world. And I hope this live contributed to you wherever you are in the world today. And thanks to the translators. Bye, everyone. Mwah.